All right, let's keep talking about menopause. So, menopause yoga is your holistic guide to crossing this river of change. So, menopause yoga is not just the asana practice, it's the holistic support for navigating this river of change, sea of change, storm of change, whatever you want to call it, of change. Menopause is an upgrade. Undeniably, neurologically, it's an upgrade, and it's up to us whether we want to make it also take advantage of that upgrade and also make it a physical and spiritual upgrade. So, and I say crossing because there's a time, a long period of time for most of us, longer than puberty, longer, much, much longer than pregnancy and early motherhood for those of us who have had children. So it's the longest period of change that we go through. The average is 10 years, but can be longer. But even if it's shorter, even if it's only 5 years, it's longer than any of these other kind of periods of change that we go through. So that's why I call it that period of change. And then once we once we get our like official, 12 months without a period and we're in menopause, many of the things that we had to navigate have stopped, and we've gone to the other side. We've reached the other shore, and we have been through the upgrade. And I also want to clarify what I mean by holistic. So holistic means supporting the pillars of health. It doesn't mean no medication. It certainly doesn't mean no hormone therapy or other medical supports. So if you've seen any of my other, whatever the things that I do, or me, you know that I'm a big fan or supporter of menopause hormone therapy when it's appropriate, and certainly have a lot of experience and personal research, to share as far as like talk what it's like talking to doctors, talking to different doctors, and what are the best, what do I want to say, like the best courses of action, right, to take if that's what you want to explore. Because for me, like, I had a hard time just getting a doctor to have a conversation with me about it, and I wasn't sure if it was what I wanted to do or not, but it was like just to be able to have a conversation and not be getting, dismissed or getting misinformation was enough of a challenge. So, anyway, my point is that holistic doesn't mean that, and it doesn't mean, not taking anything. It just means that we support the pillars of health. So, what are the pillars of health? The pillars of health are movement, some kind of mindful movement. Obviously, I like yoga. I'm a yoga therapist. The program is called Menopause Yoga. Yoga, not just being the asana, but but some kind of movement that is mindful and nurturing. Walking is the kind of therapeutic movement that we're talking about. Um, any kind of, fitness classes, there's some caveats to that, which are covered deeper in the whole series when we go into movement, but just movement as a pillar of health, that our bodies are made to move. And we want to be getting regular movement meaning every single day move. Nourishing sustenance, also known as food, is a pillar of health. This area for women is extremely charged. We live, no, even if you have never had disordered eating, even if you've never had body dysmorphia, even if you've never had any issues with your body or food, we live in a society that normalizes talking about the way that we look as if it's some kind of measurement of who we are. And that's for both men and women, but even more so for women. And we live in a society that has broken the relationship between food and nourishment and turned food into something else. And so, nourishing sustenance is a pillar of health. Food is a pillar of health. And in this program, we really address those kind of toxic messages. And I focus first on relationships with food, relationships with eating, relationships with nourishment, relationships with body. So, in other words, like how you eat is before what you eat, because if these if the mindset is not addressed, then no matter what you do, no matter how you track or don't track or count or don't count or whatever you do, is always going to be some form of bondage and some sort of oppression for the spirit, unless you get the relationship right, that food is nourishment, and it's nourishing sustenance is a pillar of health. So that's where we go with that. We do talk about like what to eat, but we do how to eat first. And so there's four pillars of health. So movement, nourishing sustenance, restoration. Restoration is sleep, is restoration. But if your body is not able to move into restorative sleep so that you're just collapsing, then the sleep isn't restorative. So if you are, and this is one of the most debilitating symptoms of the going through the change of menopause, that having disrupted sleep, having non-restorative sleep is debilitating. And so what we do in the menopause yoga is we have ways of restoring the body's knowledge of how to rest and sleep, but also that teaching and practicing that restoration is not only sleep. So it's not only when you go to bed at night and you sleep and you wake up the next day. Restoration and rest happens through all of our senses. And so we live in a world that's, we're overstimulated. And when we engage in practices that lower our level of stimulation and allow us to connect to who we are, to what's important to us, we become restored. And so you may have heard about different kinds of rest, mental rest and physical rest, spiritual rest. So like mental rest is like, when you like are, may have someone in your life who is challenging, kind of draining, right? So you make a wider boundary with them, or sometimes you decide not to see them. So that's a kind of restoration. Engaging in practices that bring you joy and that are have low task orientation are restorative practices. So if you ever, so like dancing, painting, knitting, crocheting, anything that is somewhat creative and allows you to get into, feel like you're in the flow state of mind. Meditation, of course, can also be a part of this restoration. And like I said, sleep. There's a whole separate course that's just menopause yoga for sleep, which of course addresses all the pillars of health, but focused on sleep. So we have movement, we have nourishing sustenance, we have restoration, which is not only sleep, and then of course we have mindset. So mindset affects how we see nourishing sustenance, food. We talked about that already. Mindset is our attitudes and beliefs. Our attitudes and our beliefs are mostly non-conscious. If I ask you, what your belief is about such and such, you have access to that knowledge. You may or may not be aware of what your overall attitude towards life is. I mean, you might know, like, oh, I'm an introvert or extrovert. I have a positive attitude. I try to see the best in the, or, I have negative attitude. Those things you might have access to. But many of the our deeper motivations of our belief systems and attitudes we only know by looking at the choices that we make, because ultimately our choices are driven by our attitudes and our beliefs. And so we take a kind of objective look at what the mindset is in sort of pointed at the areas of your life that have brought you to menopause yoga. So maybe menopause, what are your beliefs and attitudes about menopause, about being a woman? This is an experience that is unique to women. What are your attitudes and beliefs towards aging? And a whole host of other things. And so we look at where you spend your time and where you spend your money. Those are the things that tell us what we value, whether we're conscious of it or not. That's a way to gain access to knowing what's really important to us. And then once we see it, we have an opportunity to change it if we want to. So the mindset piece in menopause yoga has a lot to do with introspection, which we do through pranayama, breath work, and meditation, and then through journaling that is less like a sort of stream of consciousness, writing about what you think and how you feel, and more directed. So there's directed questions that encourage you to go deeper. We always ask, and what's behind that, and what's behind that, and then we look at what are you actually doing, and how does the choices that you are making line up with what you say is important to you, and then we bring those two things together. So menopause yoga is supporting all four of those pillars of health through this time of change, so that you get anchored in to your true self. This is what spiritual embodiment is. So you who was born to you who are born to be here and have this life is honored and nurtured so that you take advantage of this upgrade, the neurological upgrade, when your brain is pruning, 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 and it's annoying because you're forgetting everything, right? And most of the time it's the forgetting of the things that are unnecessary. So you're pruning, 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 and we have an opportunity to decide what are the new connections that we're making. And when we make these new connections around our true selves, we're connected to our purpose, we're connected to what brings us joy, what moves us, what fills us, then we cross the river of change, arriving to the other side in this new, upgraded place that's really glorious. So, the workshop that we're having soon is an introduction to these concepts, and we'll be providing some, like a sort of little taste of each one of these things. And certainly, you'll get skills and tools and ideas to be able to make these things your own and hopefully navigate this river of change with confidence and a feeling of empowerment.